It's raining cats and dogs, well, snowing cats and dogs here in central London and in much of the country. Mind you, it was record quick time for me driving into the studio this evening because the roads in central London are all but empty, as everyone, it seems, has heeded the hysterical overreaction of the authorities and the media warning people not to go out. As it happens, I spend a lot of time in Canada and in Russia. In Canada, I was once in the far north of the country in a town called Yellowknife, where it was 47 degrees below zero. And guess what? Nobody stayed at home. Everybody was out. Every road was passable. Every platform was clear of snow and ice. What is it about Britain that makes us such pathetic in the response that we make to this kind of snow? Mind you, as James Will was talking to Piers Corbyn earlier, got me wondering where this global warming had gotten to. We can take calls on that, though you might be already sick of them. But it's raining cats and dogs in Brexit. Not a day goes by, but some grandee, as they fondly imagine themselves to be, takes to the lectern with full media attendance and lectures us on why we did the wrong thing in the referendum nearly 2 years ago when we decided to leave the European Union. Every day almost, there's the reappearance of the Right Honourable, for that is what he is still called, Tony Blair. Now I work on the simple yardstick that anything that Tony Blair supports is something that I have to recoil from and certainly examine with the minutest of eyes and consideration. But Tony Blair can summon them, and when he summons them, he is undoubtedly the best advocate of the Remain cause. That's right, the Remain cause. He's actually the only speaker for the Remain cause who makes any sense. John Major, the Brixton boy, the slow batsman, the grey underpanted, traffic-coned, serial adulterer, John Major, the man who made the beast with two backs with Edwina Currie when she was destroying the egg industry in Britain, he was out this week too, in his grey underpants with his shirt tucked in. He was warning us, though all the time telling us it was not any kind of warning. He was stirring up controversy, though all the time telling us that was not his intention. He was supporting his successor, bar two, as Conservative leader Theresa May as the rope supports the hanging man. John Major was telling us we have made a terrible blunder in leaving the European Union, and that the only way is back. The only way is to turn back the clock. Not quite as far as John Major, but turn back the clock to before the referendum. And indeed, he openly called for a second referendum, a call echoed today by the Right Honourable Tony Blair, as he is known. Now, John Major is the reason why we had a referendum. John Major is the reason why we voted to leave the European Union, because it is John Major who rammed through Parliament on double three-line whips, day and night, keeping us up in the House of Commons every night to the early hours and sometimes right until the dawn and beyond, to impose the Maastricht Treaty on the people of this country, which utterly transformed Britain's relationship to the previous common market, transformed it into the monster that it currently is today. When It was rejected in Britain. It was a commonplace on the mainland of Europe that no other country in the European Union, including Germany, could dare have such a referendum as ours, because their people would vote to leave. That's the kind of organization the European Union has become, hated by its own people in its own borders of 28 countries. But of course, they can't always guarantee that the elections in the member states don't themselves become a kind of referendum on the EU. And one such happens on Sunday. And by good chance, I'll be standing in on Sunday afternoon here on Talk Radio between 1 and 4, and may have some indication then as to what's happening in the Italian elections. The Italian elections will be won by one or other, or perhaps a coalition of them, of parties that hate the European Union. Even Berlusconi, the bunga bunga boy of the bunga bunga EU, has had to make a sharp turn against the EU, because the formerly fascist Northern League, now tilting like the leaning Tower of Pisa towards the south of Italy, whom they used to revile, and renaming itself La Liga, appealing to all of Italy, is running on a bristling anti-EU agenda. And the five-star movement, La Liga and Berlusconi's main rival, is not just bristling with anti-EU sentiment. It, if it wins, will take decisive steps that will further unravel the existence of this monster called the EU, hated by everybody except liberals and some people who think themselves leftists here in Britain. We're the only people that love the EU, because of course it's done such a great job for us, hasn't it? Just take a look at our country. Just take a look at Poulton-le-Fylde, at Preston, at Peterborough. Just take a look at Porthcawl. Just take a look at the post-industrial wastelands of Britain. Take a look at the mass poverty that exists in our country. Take a look at the pensioners shivering through this bleak midwinter, now into spring. Haven't we done well out of the EU? When I hear these EU files talk about it, you'd think we were living in the Elysian fields instead of the bleak landscape of 2018 Britain. So the Italian elections is on the agenda tonight too, as is Germany's complete political crisis. Again, intimately connected to the EU and its flagship policy of so-called free movement of labour, meaning the mass migrations that are taking place across European countries and are changing politics there forever. The situation is that Angela Merkel lost the election, just like Theresa May. She cannot form a coalition. The SPD, the Labour Party in Germany, if they are complete idiots, will agree to form yet another Labour-Tory coalition government in Germany. Problem with that is that leaves the AfD, the Alliance for Deutschland, a proto-fascist organization, as the official opposition in the state, who will sit there and capitalize on every single further failure of Germany, the heart of the EU project. Wow. And then there's the United States, the leader of the free world, don't you know? Let's just recap on the events of the last 5 hours. Never mind the last 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months. Just the last 5 hours. There's an active shooting going on in yet another university campus in the state of Michigan. 2 are dead. The shooter is on the run. And even more horrifically, just a couple of hours before, in the state of Ohio, a 13-year-old boy, 13, came out of the cloakroom holding an semi-automatic rifle with the intent of mass murder of his schoolmates, of his classmates, and their teachers. And then he changed his mind, went back into the cloakroom, put the semi-automatic rifle into his mouth, and blew his own brains out. Well, a lucky escape for a large number of his fellow students whose brains he was going to blow out. This deeply sick, psychologically sick country, the United States of America, is still out there seeking to reorder the world, starting an arms race, a nuclear arms race, provoking other countries, Russia, Korea, China, Turkey, browbeating and bullying its so-called allies and friends into adopting the most militaristic postures that he can browbeat them into adopting. This United States that cannot keep its own school children free from a hail of semi-automatic rifles on a daily, or today, on an hourly basis, is seeking to tell the rest of the world how it should order its affairs. I've said to you before, I say it again with as much power as I can muster, until we cut this umbilical cord with the United States of America, until we cease to regard it even as a civilized state, never mind the so-called leader of the so-called free world, our foreign policy is doomed to follow them over the cliff over and over again. Ireland, Brexit, it's coming up right after this.